Sonic sacrifices his life to save his friends, and he is brought back as the legendary warrior Super Dark Sonic in Sonic 5, the movie. Knuckles, Tails, and Amy Rose were on their knees on the ground, too weak to get up. We see Sonic slammed at full speed against a huge column that held up the place, and the impact was so strong that it broke with his body. The Chaos Emeralds he was using to fight that villain fell to the ground, leaving his body. Sonic was breathing heavily on the floor, leaning against what was left of the column, while he watched the emeralds around his feet stop glowing because they had lost their power. At the same time, Sonic's heart was beating slower and slower. Sonic, almost unable to move, watched as his dear Amy Rose, Knuckles, and Tails were captured by dark energy tentacles wrapping around their bodies. The one controlling this energy was none other than the villain Mephiles the Dark, who came from the future to finish Team Sonic and steal their powers along with the emeralds. Knuckles, Tails, and Amy Rose fell to their knees, unable to move, while Mephiles floated in the air, raising his power to finish them with a final attack. At that moment, Sonic shouted, "Leave them alone, your battle is with me." But Mephiles, still holding them and levitating, lifted his hand in a sign of victory and said, "Don't you see that your battle with me is already over? The victory is mine." Sonic, not knowing what it means to give up, dragged himself across the ground and tried to stand up as best he could. He pushed his power to the max and said to Mephiles, "You're going to see the true power of a hedgehog." But the dark villain looked at him with contempt and thought, "What a waste of time." He prepared a huge dark energy arrow for Sonic. At that moment, Sonic collapsed, because even at full power, he didn't have enough energy to stay on his feet. Mephiles then said, "It's a waste of time and energy to use my attack on you. Better I show you how I finish off your friends." He launched the arrow toward Tails. With a sudden rush of adrenaline, Sonic boosted his power in just seconds, ran at full speed to rescue him, and placed himself in the path of the attack. Sonic took the hit directly, and the dark energy arrow pierced through his chest. Mephiles pulled the arrow out of Sonic's chest, and Sonic fell to the dry ground like a sack. Tails shook his head, trying to wake him up while crying next to Amy Rose. Knuckles, full of rage, stood up and charged at Mephiles. But the villain disappeared using his space-time technique and returned to his own era, having completed his mission. There we see Team Sonic crying for their friend Sonic, who had already lost his life. The sadness was so deep that even the sky cried with a warm rain. At that moment, when everything seemed lost, we see Shadow the Hedgehog walking in an unknown place. Over a small puddle of water, he found what he was looking for, the white Chaos Emerald. Unlike the ones expelled from Sonic's body that lost their power, color, and glow, this one still kept its color and power intact. Shadow bent down, picked up the emerald and said, "This is not your last story, Sonic. It's time to go save you."
Hey you! Don't forget subscribe!
Please subscribe to our channel!
Subscribe now!
Shadow arrived at the place where Sonic had died through a ring portal and placed the white emerald on Sonic's chest. Right away, the wound began to heal, and Sonic woke up. Everyone was in shock to see that Sonic had come back to life. Shadow explained that he had traveled across hundreds of different universes using Amy Rose's technology, searching for other versions of the emeralds to save Sonic. But what I found in those universes was terrifying. In every universe I visited at this time, Team Sonic suffered the same fate. They all died at the hands of Mephiles. I visited 234 universes until in one of them I saw something different. One of the emeralds that had lost its power after Mephiles stole it began to shine white. For some reason, the Dark Hedgehog couldn't take its power. When the Sonic of that universe took the emerald, he gained the strength to face and defeat Mephiles. That power now lies within you, Sonic. You must learn to channel it so we can use it against Mephiles. Team Sonic was determined about what had to be done. Meanwhile, Mephiles had returned to his era 200 years in the future to dominate Earth with the power he stole from Team Sonic and the Emeralds. Shadow and the others helped Sonic train to control that power, but it might have been better for Sonic if he had never been born. Shadow didn't show even a bit of mercy. He pushed all his power to the max and charged at Sonic, attacking in zigzags at a speed that even Sonic couldn't predict. Slamming Sonic's head into the ground, he left him almost dizzy. Shadow had the ability to freeze time for his enemies in a certain area, and after a combo that looked like something out of pro wrestling, Sonic fell to the ground, beaten by Shadow. From above, Shadow came down to deliver the final blow with a powerful Chaos Beam. This went on day after day. Every time Sonic saw Shadow coming, he didn't know where to hide his head from fear. But as the days passed, our beloved Hedgehog Sonic began to gain more power. There we see Sonic racing against Knuckles and Tails to decide who was the fastest, while Amy Rose took care of feeding them so they would stay strong. In every race, Sonic always came in first, his power shining brightly. Then came the moment when Sonic stood up and said, "I'm ready to use it!" Just as Sonic shouted loudly, Shadow arrived, falling like a meteor to the ground and releasing huge flames that covered the whole area. Without hesitation, he said, "Let's see if that's true." Sonic and Shadow began to fight, both covered in a layer of chaos energy that gave them enormous power. But the difference was clear. Shadow attacked with great speed, and Sonic couldn't dodge his strikes. Shadow pressed him, questioning, "Is this all you've got?" With his eyes glowing red at full power, Shadow charged at Sonic to push him into an all-or-nothing moment. Then, with a huge rush of adrenaline, Sonic unconsciously began to release a kind of dark chaos energy from his body, covering him like an aura. Shadow said, "Excellent, it's starting to come out." Without pause, they continued the battle, but now with a clear difference, Sonic kept up with Shadow, dodging all his attacks. Not only that, the atmosphere around them began to change, filling with a dense dark fog. There we see Sonic cornering Shadow with punches, showing him his great power. The training went on for hours, and Shadow couldn't even touch a single quill on Sonic. Instead, he was left without strength to keep fighting. Sonic's power had increased about 120 times. His strength was so great that gravity itself was affected just by his presence, but all that power began to affect Sonic. During the whole battle against Shadow, he had only used 20% of his power, and now that dark energy inside him wanted to come out completely. Losing control, Sonic jumped at Shadow with the intention of finishing him once and for all. Everyone was shocked to see Sonic lose control, and they felt great fear. But just when Shadow was about to perish, Sonic began to resist. Holding his head in pain, he suppressed the dark energy. At that moment, Shadow stood up and said, "There's something I didn't tell you. In one universe out of the 234 I visited, it was the only one where Sonic managed to defeat Mephiles. The only way he did it was by gaining a new transformation called Dark Sonic. He defeated Mephiles easily, but in the process he went mad from all that power, to the point of attacking his own friends. But it won't be the same in our case, because that Sonic didn't have something you do. Something Tom told you long ago that you carried inside." Rising again, Sonic, with his warrior's heart burning, focused all his dark energy and now visualized it within himself. It happened that the emeralds, which had fallen inactive, left a small remnant of power inside Sonic, and now that remnant was activated after contact with the white emerald. Sonic was completely covered by this dark energy, rising from the soles of his feet to his head like a whirlwind, and he transformed into Dark Sonic. His body turned dark, and his eyes released pure electricity. His power was now 500 times greater than before, but as his power grew, so did the darkness inside him. Now Sonic was worse than a villain. They discovered this in the worst way, because Tails, not knowing what was happening, ran toward Sonic to congratulate him with a hug. Sonic sent him flying back with a massive punch that also knocked Knuckles down in the process. Shadow, knowing what was happening, charged at Sonic to stop him, but it was an unfair battle. Sonic dodged all his attacks as if he had Goku's Ultra Instinct. He even let Shadow hit him just to show that the attack wouldn't move him at all. Not even increasing his chaos control to the maximum helped Shadow. He was defeated anyway. But Sonic didn't realize that Shadow's increase in chaos control wasn't from his own power. Secretly, Shadow carried a second Chaos Emerald, green in color. Embedding it into Sonic's chest, the emerald began to push out the dark energy invading Sonic's mind and concentrated it in his chest. This gave Sonic a new transformation. Now he was Super Dark Sonic. And the best part was that Sonic was finally able to control his mind. After seeing what happened in that universe where all of Sonic's friends lost their lives, Shadow investigated another 300 universes until he found one where Sonic managed to control his mind using the Dark Sonic transformation. This was possible by using another emerald as a catalyst. Shadow apologized to Sonic for pushing him to that point, but explained he couldn't reveal the plan until Sonic lost control, otherwise it wouldn't have worked. But this wasn't the time for apologies, because once Mephiles learned that Sonic had reached this power, being a master of space-time, he returned from 200 years in the future to steal it from Sonic. Mephiles charged at Sonic, but now Sonic had a power that made everything look like slow motion. Striking Mephiles in the stomach, he knocked him to the ground. But Mephiles said, "That was your mistake." Suddenly Sonic collapsed, because by touching him, Mephiles drained a large part of his power. And that wasn't the worst part. Mephiles had now created clones of himself that surrounded and trapped Sonic's friends.
Subscribe and I'll give you a hot dog. Come on, hit that button for a tasty reward. Don't miss out, it's gonna be great.
Sonic grew frustrated as he realized everything was happening just like in the universe where his friends died, only in a different way. But Sonic said, "This time it will be different. And more than that, it will be the opposite." Super Dark Sonic increased his power and charged at Mephiles, telling everyone, "I'm sorry, my friends. I will love you forever." Raising his power, he exploded himself along with Mephiles, and both disappeared from the face of the earth. Sonic had died, or at least that's what Knuckles, Tails, Amy Rose, and Shadow believed. In reality, Sonic was transported along with Mephiles to the year 2226, where Mephiles was not the main villain. There was one even greater than him, terrifying the entire planet Earth.